get to try to right so many of the social injustices in this country, losing that platform financially, what they would have lost in the short term, and then potentially the long term. The owners have the ability to terminate this collective bargaining agreement. The executive director of the Players Association, Michelle Roberts, laid that out again to the players in that meeting 2 nights ago. And then competitively, they've invested in these playoffs. We are headed into the second round of the playoffs with Toronto and Boston. And I think ultimately all of those factors played in to the players' decision to continue these playoffs.
And so when, Woj, should we expect to see games resume?
Saturday. I think the league will make a formal announcement on that at some point today. But the playoffs are expected to resume on Saturday, and we'll pick right where we left off on Wednesday.
Okay, fair enough. And so, again, the games that were not played will be played. It will ultimately have been, as some described it, a pause in the schedule, and they will just go on. So what else would you say are the next steps now for the players and the league as they move forward?
Greeny, the players and the owners had a conference call last night, and they talked about more partnership with these issues that are important to the Players Association. And you're going to see, I think, among other things, more of a focus between now and the November election on voter registration, voter suppression. You're seeing teams around the league, you're seeing it all over sports, but in the NBA, teams using their arenas and their facilities as polling centers. The Houston Rockets now using their Toyota Center in downtown Houston for the November 3rd presidential election. And I think you're going to see a greater focus, I think especially on voter suppression in susceptible areas all over this country.
It's Adrian Woj is all over this, all this entire weekend beyond. Woj, thank you as always, and we'll check in with you a little later this morning. But again, expect games to return tomorrow. To the NFL we go next, where 9 teams canceled practice yesterday. They included the Jets, the Packers, the Colts, the Titans, Broncos, Cardinals, Chargers, Bears, and the Washington football team. Meanwhile, the Giants haven't ruled out the option of sitting out a game in the regular season to protest social injustice. Here is Saquon Barkley.
I can't really just go and speak on behalf of the whole league, but I mean, for us, that's something that we're going to talk about within our groups, within our team, and what's talked about in players in meetings, and players meetings stays in player meetings.
All right, interesting there. We bring in our Jeff Darlington here. Jeff, Saquon talking about sitting out regular season games. What are you hearing around the league about that possibility?
Well, Greeny, I spoke to a number of very high-profile players last night, and I definitely sense that these conversations about what to do, perhaps canceling games when they start to occur, is certainly a major topic of conversation. Now, one player, though, did tell me. Now, it doesn't feel like there's any dissension about what to do here, but there certainly seems to be some very healthy conversations. One player pointing out, a high-profile quarterback telling me that games and money are our biggest allies right now. You want to stay in the media and control the narrative if you want to affect change. This player pointing out that the NFL is a very different beast than, say, Major League Baseball or the NBA, in the sense that players are getting paid 1/16 of their salary each week. Dak Prescott making $2 million per game. That $2 million can affect change in great ways rather than be forfeited. So certainly an interesting topic there. Now, I did ask another player how he felt about that, if he thought that games could be canceled. His answer, Greeny, very poignant. He said to me, I don't know yet. If black people keep on getting killed, then ... You can read between the lines there. This is a very hot topic within the NFL circles, and certainly a discussion that will be had all the way up until these games do start week 1.
Absolutely. And if there's one thing that we've seen from the NBA the last few days, the leadership amongst the players. Chris Paul and some of the others have talked a lot about whatever they do, doing it together, about being unified in what they do. I know that you can't talk to literally everyone, but do you get a sense generally that there is unity? You see some teams practice, other teams don't. Do you get a sense there is unity in the way this stuff is viewed amongst NFL players?
I would say that there is a unified voice in the sense that a lot of these players are obviously recognize that change needs to be had. So I wouldn't call it divisive by any means. Instead, the conversation I just noted about, hey, some guys say that, no, we need to be in the face of the media. That's, maybe a different viewpoint than guys that say we need to potentially cancel games. But I don't sense that it's tense. That one player I was talking about, the quarterback, was telling me about some change that the team actually is coming to in terms of initiatives that they're starting. So I think that there's some really good things on the horizon that don't necessarily just mean canceled games.
All right, Jeff Darlington, well done. Thank you, my friend, and we'll see you again soon as we continue to follow all of this. We're having some technical difficulties getting Jeff Passan in for our baseball conversation, so I'll bring Tim Hasselbeck into the conversation and pick it up there, one of our football crew. Good morning, Tim. And I just wonder what your thoughts are as we see different teams canceling practice yesterday and trying to assess the meaning of that and then the possibilities involved of NFL games. Again, the NFL season kicks off 2 weeks from last night. The possibility of games ultimately being missed during this time. I wonder what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a huge distinction in the NFL. Jeff alluded to many of them between, canceling a practice and canceling a game. And I think even some of the comments that Woj made about some of the decisions that NBA players, the conversations they were having about, skipping games or canceling the rest of the season. You think about the platform, which is obviously what, Jeff is alluding to, and you think about the financial ramifications, alluding to what someone like Dak Prescott would be giving up, and also what he could do with, the money that, he would make during that time by missing a game. And then you think about, the longer term ramifications, and if you were going to sit out an actual game, if that would in fact have an impact on the labor deal, the labor agreement that you recently came to with the NFL and the owners. So, look, I think that the NFL is probably significantly further away from canceling games than the NBA, just because of the number of guys and then the different ramifications and sacrifice, for each individual player.
Yeah, so we've seen it in the NBA, and now the football teams canceling their practices. Tim, thank you. Stay there. Let's get then to the baseball, where 7 games were postponed yesterday in protest of the police shooting of Jacob Blake. The Mets and the Marlins came out to the field, observed 42 seconds of silence in honor of Jackie Robinson. Lewis Brinson put a Black Lives Matter shirt on home plate before both teams walked off the field.
It has to continue. It can't just be tonight that we make that message and me laying down the shirt on home plate and that's it. It's just, it has to be a movement. It has to be continual every single day, every moment or every chance that you get. This needs to be emphasized.
Interestingly, yesterday, Cardinals pitcher Jack Flaherty, in frustration that some teams didn't play while others did, tweeted this, as you can see. Why is it so hard to do something unified for one day, just one day? We have reestablished our contact with our insider, Jeff Passan. So, Jeff, good morning. 7 games as a whole get postponed yesterday. Others are played. You hear Flaherty bringing up that question. Why was there no unified stance here in baseball?
Greeny, I'd like to make an argument against a unified stance here. And the idea that Major League Baseball would come together on the fly and tell all teams this is something you should do, this is what's good for the sport, is, I suppose, noble in theory. But in practice, the reason that the New York Mets and Miami Marlins did what they did yesterday, the reason that Lewis Brinson laid down the Black Lives Matter shirt on home plate, is because the teams got together and came up with that themselves. The reason that you saw 7 games postponed yesterday and 3 games postponed the day before is because the players sat in meetings, had uncomfortable, difficult conversations, and came to the conclusion that playing right now simply was not the right